All right, so I'm so excited to be welcoming Carlos Whittaker here. Carlos, we've been trying to make this happen for a while, my friend.
We have, and I'm here. What's funny is we just had a conversation saying that we're doing this face to face over the computer, but I'm literally flying to New York tomorrow. We could have done it in person, but hey, we're just gonna get it done.
We got to get it done. It's too long. We're not risking anything at this point. If we've
That's
learned
right.
anything about this world, and certainly you discuss in depth in your new book about 2020. So
Yes.
I feel lucky to be part of what you call the Insta Familia. Frankly, if it wasn't
Oh,
for
thanks,
2020
man.
and it wasn't for Instagram, we would not be having this conversation
We
today, at
wouldn't.
least not on my end.
Right, nor mine as well, and I'm glad to be part of your news community. I'm all in, bro. I'm like a subscriber to your thing, so I'm all
Oh,
in.
Oh, we we
Yeah,
we we very much appreciate you.
yeah,
We call you part of
yes,
the Mo News team, Carlos.
yes. Mo news, bro.
So Carlos is an author of multiple books, including a new one called How to Human, which we'll discuss today. He is a motivational speaker, motivational Instagrammer, former pastor, storyteller. Uh, I discovered him on Instagram, but many of you may interact with him through all of his many
All
platforms.
all the things.
You may have seen him in person. He's a traveler of many. How many states have
I
you?
am.
Are you almost done with 50
All of them.
states?
I'm done. I'm done. I can retire. I've been to every single one.
Amazing, amazing. I'm at 49. I'm just missing Alaska at this point. So
Oh my gosh. Well, you may not come back once you go. It's beautiful. Can you guess what my last state was?
the 50th state.
Yeah.
It's got to be like an obvious one, right? Like one that like everyone would be like
We're
that.
we're Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Nebraska, if you can
Okay.
believe it.
How was Nebraska? Did it live up to expectations?
Nope. It's okay. I love you, Nebraska, but no, it just didn't.
Got it. Got it. Carlos, your new book, How to Human, lays out a vision on how to help all of us become the best versions of ourselves, break out of our bubbles, start reaching out to human beings again. A tall order, it feels like, in
Yeah.
2023.
Yeah. It's a tall order. Man, I just feel like we've forgotten how people are so freaking mean these days. And I'm like, were we this mean in even in 2019? It didn't feel like it.
Well, that's a question I had, and you know, it almost feels like there's a demarcation point. People like to point to 2016 election, 2015,
Sure.
2016. Some people, especially on the left, would like to point to Donald Trump, saying everything
Sure.
changed, everything was hunky dory before that. I don't know
Yeah.
that that was necessarily true, though.
No, yeah, and this is what I like to remind people that well, all we have now is just more access to people's opinions than we had in 2010, in 2000. We weren't gifted the opportunity, and gifted may be the wrong word, the opportunity to actually know and hear what everybody's thinking about every single thing. And it's just, I feel like now we just know more. So we just have more access to people's opinion. Those opinions were there before. There just wasn't necessarily access for people to give them or for us to hear them. So since we found ourselves now in this new season of information, how can we best human that information? How can we best process it, look at it, whatever it may be? And so, yeah, so, I think you're right. You look back at people are like, oh, it's as bad as it's ever been. The world's as bad. It's like, actually, no. People aren't like, chopping each other's head off for the sake of religion in the middle of Oakley Drive. Like that's not happening right now. So
Right.
things have been worse. But yeah, I think we have more access. And so it feels sometimes like it is. But I don't know if it necessarily is.
Yeah, we access more content in hours, right, than previous
Yep.
generations might have had in their entire lifetime.
Yep. There's one study. It was a Harvard study that I'd found that says that the American, and this was in 2016, that the first 15 minutes that an American is awake, because we use our phones as our alarm clocks,
Right.
we are accessing more information in that 15 minutes than our great grandparents did in a month.
Hmm.
And so to look at just the amount of content we're consuming, yeah, I think from the consumer end, that's going to have a pretty negative effect on a lot of our relationships.
Yeah, so you begin your book, and this introduction struck me, and I want to just take a moment here to read it because I think it sets up the conversation nicely.
Yeah.
The overwhelming amount of news and content and social media chatter tells us that the world has gone to hell, that there is no hope for humanity, that our divided opinions have led us to oppression, that the country is just going to get worse from here, that there is no hope for decency in our world, that the whole thing is us versus them. All that messaging leaves us in a scary place where we are merely surviving instead of thriving.
Yeah. There we go. Wow. Good job, Carlos. Set that one up
Carlos,
for us, right?
you set the table nicely there. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, after reading that, I'm like, oh, wait, is the book going to get better from here? And
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah.
You then spend the next 200 pages explaining that
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be that way. But that certainly
Yeah.
does feel like the world we live in these days.
It does. It does. And I don't want to I don't want to tell anybody that their feelings that they feel that may be overwhelming in nature aren't legit, right? They're like our feelings. I like to say, I've heard this from numerous people, but like my feelings don't necessarily get to drive, but they can ride shotgun. So like as long as they're not in complete and total control, then they're not going to allow me to make decisions based on the overwhelming nature of maybe how I feel on certain days. And so, at the beginning of the book, yeah, I do kind of lay it out there. I'm like, listen, let's call a spade a spade. We're all exhausted. I mean, I was writing this book. So I wrote this book and started writing it in 2021. So the summer of 2020 had already happened. I'd already lost numerous relationships because I'm standing up for justice issues that I believe in.
Yeah.
When it comes to the evangelical space, I've been uninvited from a lot of places because I won't stand up and say that I'm a Trump person, and there are all kinds of things were happening.
And this is the fallout of Black Lives Matter as well, right? That
yes,
summer.
Absolutely. It was the fallout of Black Lives Matter and of me going to marches and teaching on racial reconciliation, all the things, right? And so I'm writing this book out of a space of, you know what, if I'm going to write a book called How to Human, then I actually need to be the one and to use my story to see if reconciliation, if unity is actually something that is just a figment of my imagination, or can this actually happen? So, in the book, I go through a lot of conversations I had with friends of mine who vehemently disagreed with me politically, that had been friends of mine for 20 plus years, who our relationships completely fell apart. And I kind of used myself as a case study. Can I continue to be friends with these people? And can I rekindle a friendship that may have been lost because of differences of political opinions? And, fortunately, yeah, I was able to really rekindle a lot of those relationships. Some of them weren't able to be. So I'll go ahead and tell people, like, the subtitle is 3 Ways to Share Life Beyond What Distracts, Divides, and Disconnects Us, which is like, okay, round of applause to my editor that wrote that nice fluffy subtitle. But the truth is that is hard to do. Like, it is not difficult.
Right, 3 ways sounds simple, but then you actually have to. It's only 3 things.
Then you have to unpack it. Yeah, it's just 3 things, guys. Plug in these 3 things, and then you're going to be set. But no, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of us having to swallow our own pride, my own pride, and be like, if I truly want to see humanity thrive in my own small circle, in my own small life, I'm going to have to make a lot of. I'm just going to have to sacrifice myself. And, we want the other person to sacrifice a lot. We want that to come from them. But this process, really, it's a hard book. I mean, when you read the book, I'm going to be asking you to do a lot of things, like, again, don't stand on issues, walk with people. Well, that's really easy to say. You could put that on a bumper sticker. But what happens if the person, Carlos, you're asking me to walk with is dehumanizing an entire subsect of Americans? Like, how do I do that?
We saw this recently. I mean, I was engaged in this whole discussion a couple weeks ago when CNN did a live town hall meeting with former President Trump. And some people said, how could you? And some people said, why wouldn't you? He's a former president. And we've never been, and by the way, there's never been a president like him, right? At the same time, if it's 2023 now, like, this person's running for president, he has command of his party. Can you ignore him? And people want to, I mean, we can get into this, but cancel, right? Like,
exactly. People do. They want to cancel, and I just don't see how. And our good friend Sharon McMahon,
right.
I think leads the charge in saying and helping us understand that we cannot simply look at another entire group of people, say on the opposite side of the aisle, and point a finger and say they are the enemy. I'm telling you, the second that happens, that is when we're doomed. And that's what I'm trying to tell people.
It's the dehumanizing. It's dehumanizing.
It is.
When someone is your enemy, you're allowed to do bad things to them.
Yes, exactly. And so when we do that, that's when it starts getting dangerous. And so what I'm simply calling people to in this book and in this work is, what does it look like to truly see people, and maybe coaching people into this, but seeing people that don't look like you, think like you, talk like you, vote like you, love like you, all the things like you. What is it like to actually see them and to understand that everything that they're shouting about, everything that may drive you crazy about what they believe and how they are displaying those feelings and those opinions, it's all rooted. Every bit of it is rooted in a true story in their life. So my friends that vehemently disagree with me politically and maybe have some outrageous opinions that I think I can't even believe they would think that, all of those are still rooted in some semblance of truth in their story. Now, I may not have to agree with how they have come out of that story, but we're all wounded in some way, shape, or form. All of these things that we're affected by, that we're so passionate about, they come out of our story.
Right.
And our story is real. And the person that disagrees with me on whatever issue it is, they actually have a very real story as well. And all I'm asking us to do is to stop coming to these conversations with fingers pointed like this, and instead maybe some hands open like this. And I promise, we are going to find ways to do this in a healthier way.
Well, we keep trying to figure out we've discussed a bit in this conversation about like the demarcation point. When did things change? And maybe it's social
Yeah.
media. Certainly that's had an impact. But at some point, our politics became our identity. And it wasn't always
Yes.
that case. And we're not that old, Carlos. Like, it didn't
Right.
feel this way in the 90s or early 2000s
Right.
that, you could, I had an interview earlier today with the head of Gallup polling.
Oh, wow.
And they were looking at the numbers. And there was a time when a president, no matter what party they were from, could command more than half of the
Right.
other party in terms of favorability. That is no longer the case. We are a 50-50 country. I don't care how much money you give me, candid.
Uh-huh.
If I'm red and you're blue, I don't care what you do. I hate you. Right?
Yes, it's it.
But politics is identity.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I'm impressed because a lot of people have blocked out the people in their lives who
Yeah.
believe something different. But you talk
Yeah.
about how you have friends, and it's great that you have friends who
Yeah.
believe something diametrically opposed
Yeah.
when it comes to politics.
Yeah.
How do you maintain those friendships? What are the questions you ask when you have those conversations? Because I get that question a lot from people. How can I
Yeah.
talk to my uncle or my father or my cousin or my
Yeah.
brother? We can't have a meal anymore.
I know. The reason why we can't have a meal anymore is because what you see when you see them is you see an opinion. You've stopped seeing a human. And my wife, I talk about this really in marriage a lot. Like I think that my wife and I, right? Like my wife and I have really different opinions on a whole lot of things. Like a whole lot of things. Yes, maybe the big kind of moral issues in our lives. Like we have a compass that kind of leads us in the same direction. But we had a difference of opinions on the V word. Back in 2020, we had a difference of opinion on a lot of things. But when I look at her, I don't see her opinions. Like I literally see the holistic picture of who she is. I see her as a mother. I see a lot of great things that she does in my life on a daily basis. And so what I have to do is I have to get to the place where I stop seeing people as an opinion and start seeing them again as a human. And it's hard. I know it's difficult to do, but I mean, I'll just give you an example for me. So 2020, here we are. I am like, it's the summer. I'm at marches. I'm shouting out on Twitter that no more no-knock warrants. Like I've done the research. No-knock warrants are horrible.
Right, this is coming out of Breonna Taylor.
This is coming out of Breonna Taylor, and I'm like angry, and I'm like this and that. I have a buddy of mine that is a police officer on the SWAT team in LA, and he saw that everything that I was frustrated about, no-knock warrants, all of the things. And so he calls me after he sees all these tweets where I'm like, ban no-knock warrants. And he goes, hey, Carlos, like, can we talk for a second? I was like, sure. He said, so do you know that I serve no-knock warrants? And I was like, actually, no, I didn't know that. He goes, I have a question. Do you love me? This is what he asks me. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of stupid. He goes, okay, do you love my wife, Lori? I said, yeah. He goes, do you love my son, Cameron? I said, yeah. He goes, so I need to let you know, when I leave at night at 2 a.m. to go serve these warrants, if I knock on the door there's some bad guys on the other side of the door. And if I were to knock, they would pump 12 shotgun shells through the door straight at me. And I go, well, I don't want that to happen. He goes, okay. He goes, so do you want me to knock, or do you want me to not knock? And I was like, well, you don't have to knock, but everyone else has to knock. So what happened all of a sudden is suddenly he became a human. The issue became a human to me. And so I just learned from that conversation that I have to continue to try to see the other side as not an issue, but a human. And that really began to, now, did my mind change completely on no knock warrants? No. But I was like, I'm going to now lean in a little bit more and maybe learn a little bit more, because suddenly there's a human attached to my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like we live in an age, and companies are doing, huge corporations, Disney is dealing with the fact that they're all expected to have opinions about everything, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things coming at us, and it's like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And so no knock warrants, right? No, you've decided you're gonna have a position on it, but then you start to do some more research into it, and it becomes a more complex issue. It's not black and white,
yes,
so to speak.
Yes.
But everyone feels like they so quickly need to jump on things. Yes, it doesn't allow you to see the human beings behind the issue.
No, it doesn't. And I'm telling you, the more we can, because listen, I mean, I passionately disagree with so many policies and so many things that I see that I see as like dehumanizing policies. But I have to get to the point where I have to be able to listen to understand and to listen to my whoever it is point of view that agrees differently than me, and sincerely try to see why it is they feel like what I'm doing is dehumanizing, because it just goes both ways. And I don't know, man, maybe I've just gotten to the point where I'm later in life and I'm just like, I'm not in my 30s anymore. And I'm just like, I'm not right about everything. Like I probably change my mind multiple times a week. I even have a change my mind journal that I use every week, and I try to put 5 things in there a week that I change my mind on, because I'm constantly
trying to learn. You change your mind on 5 things a week.
I try to 5 things a week. I've got my list, 5 things a week. And listen, it doesn't have to be like political things. Like I changed my mind on broccoli the other day. Like I'm like, I found a new way to eat broccoli. So like I'm just constantly trying to show myself. I'm now pro broccoli as long as it's in a cast iron skillet. But I'm just constantly trying to, if we're done growing, if we're done learning, what's the point, you know? So I love to continue to grow in that way.
Though. I feel like people almost, they might admit to you privately, yeah, I don't actually believe that anymore, but I'm too embarrassed to admit that I had that wrong.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and it's dangerous these days. I mean, listen, I've got a public platform, and if I share something that I've changed my mind on, that 75% of my platform disagrees with me, guess what? Suddenly, like, I'm in a risky situation. Suddenly, like, I am like, wow, is my shifting in beliefs on this subject, am I going to lose everybody? Am I going to? So it costs to change your mind these days. So I'm not going to act like it doesn't.
Well, I was going to say, like, how did you get to the point to have that sort of courage? Because it feels like for many people, they're scared of people coming at them. They're scared of being canceled. They're scared to take a stand. Because of what their family may believe, their spouse may believe, their coworkers might believe.
Yep. I became comfortable with it when, and I actually talk about this in How to Human, when right after the Ahmaud Arbery shooting went public, and I went on my Instagram account, and it was March, or I can't remember when it was in 2020. You probably can remember, but I uploaded a video. And now listen, at this point in my Instagram career, I had 20,000 Instagram followers, and
February 2020 into March 2020. Yeah.
Yes, I basically had built them in an evangelical context, right? So like I was traveling in like Christian churches and speaking on Christian stages. So most of my followers were very conservative Christians. And I got on and I put up a video that said, how my white friends can help the black community today. And bro, I uploaded that video, and overnight I lost 11,000 Instagram followers. I lost half of my Instagram followers, and maybe a little less than half. And I remember thinking when I woke up the next morning, oh my God, I made a big mistake. I need to delete it. So I almost deleted the video because I was like, I got to get him back. I got to apologize to them all. But then I thought, wait a second, like, Everybody didn't leave, which means there's a lot of people that are vibing with what I'm saying. Let me see what happens if I continue on this journey from what I felt was an important thing to talk about. Well, guess what happened? 278,000 followers later, yes, I was canceled by a lot of people, but because I was consistent to my beliefs and did what I felt called to do, I saw the benefits on the back end of it. And so, yes, here's the thing. We're all going to get canceled at some. I'm telling you, if you have 50 friends, you're going to get canceled because of something you've done. That can't be the basis on whether or not we speak with integrity and speak up for things that we believe in. And so I saw it. It happened to me, but I'm on the back end of it now, and I'm like, no, it was worth it.
How did you get there? Because like I go through this. I mean, and by the way, no matter how big your social following is, or if you run a business, or whether you're going to deal with this, and you get focused on the, even if it's just a couple people, right? You don't know what you're talking about. You're the worst person ever, and it doesn't matter that 100 people praised you, or 100 people thought you did good, or you have friends and family, etc. You're focused on those on those people. That you didn't get.
Bono famously talked about doing a show at some arena. It was the one in Paris where PSG plays, the big arena. And he talked about how the arena was full, and he was like having the show of his life. This was like in the 90s, and it was amazing. And then the next day in the paper, there was some critic that talked about just how bad the show was and how bad. And he said that for 2 weeks, he sat there and sulked in the sorrow of what this one man's opinion was about a show that was filled with 80,000 people that were singing all of his songs. And, when I hear him talk about that, I just have to get back to listen, there is the large majority of people that are following me on a daily basis for whatever it is that they're getting from me. They may not agree with everything I'm saying, but they're here for the overarching theme of hope that I'm trying to give people. So yes, I just had to get brave enough to know that I'm going to offend people every single day, and people will probably let me know that they're leaving. But the truth is they can go, because other people that need to hear the message are going to replace them, and they're going to come in. So as long as you're believing in what you're doing, I think you're going to be
Your
okay.
wife is referred to you as a hope dealer, Carlos.
Yes.
How did you get into this? Talk to me about your life's journey. Is this something from childhood? Is this something as a teenager, early career? How and why are you doing what you're doing today?
So I started off, I was a pastor in a local church in Southern California. I was the music pastor. So, I'd get up on stage and sing these very inspirational songs, and I'd see people, out there really connecting with the music. And man, there was something absolutely beautiful about seeing people connect through hope, through music, through like artistry, another way besides just a sermon or whatever. And so I did that, but then after a while, I started a blog. I don't know if people remember what a blog is, but if you're over 35 years old, you may remember.
So back before on the internet.
Yeah. I had a typepad blog, and I was like, every day I'd type on there. And so many people were like, they'd comment or they'd send me messages or emails saying, gosh, you give me so much hope just showing your authentic self. So I started talking about my anxiety, that I had anxiety. This was back in like 2003. And so I remember once I took a picture of myself taking a Paxil, a pill, a little 15 milligram Paxil pill, which is SSRI. And I took it on my blog. And I remember it was so controversial because I was a pastor at a church, but I was taking medicine for mental health. And so I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get fired. Like, this is horrible. I'm not trusting God enough or whatever it may be. The amount of people that said, Carlos, thank you so much for being vulnerable and showing that we can all search for hope in whatever way we see fit. That was that was the very beginning where I thought, wow, people are out there looking for a little bit, maybe different version of finding hope than the traditional way that maybe the church has showed them. Well, here I am now, on the Mo News podcast, and I would say that 50% of the people that follow me don't even believe the same thing I believe when it comes to faith, but they're still getting hope from what I'm saying. And so what I try to do now is deliver it in a way that is accessible to everybody, no matter what belief system you have. I still feel like intrinsically we're all created with this humanity inside of us that is all searching for hope in the same way. And, we're looking for hopeful stories. We're looking for, people are just looking for someone else to say, I did it, I went through it, and I came out on the other side. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And it's addicting, man. I'm telling you, like to give people hope on a daily basis is absolutely addicting. And I can't think of anything else I'd rather be doing.
Contagious. It is. I remember just being in a workplace, and it goes both ways, right? Somebody's negative around you, and it's contagious in a terrible way. And in the same way, positivity and optimism is so contagious. So, we're just talking about faith there. You're a man of Christian faith. You discuss in the book, you bring up examples from Jesus's life. How do people react who don't believe in God or aren't Christians or don't believe in organized religion or had a very bad experience with organized religion? How do they react to that sort of thing? And why do you still utilize it in your books, knowing how divisive that can be?
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's divisive because people use it to be divisive. Right. And so I feel like when somebody, I have a lot of atheists that I actually have like a whole like atheist basically review section of my book where atheists have reviewed my book. And they said, listen, Carlos talks about Jesus. I do not believe in Jesus in any way, shape, or form. But the way he does it, he's not preaching at me. Right. He's not trying to convert me. And I actually say it at the beginning of the book. I say, listen, I'm going to use Jesus. I know my picture's on the front of this book, but I'm not the human expert here. I'm not the one that we're going to be looking at. I'm going to be using the model and the life of Jesus. You can believe that Jesus is the Son of God, or you can believe that Jesus was like Gandhi, like a historical figure that was just a good dude.
Right. As a Jew, I'm often asked by people, like, what's your view of Jesus? And I'm like, our view is he was a Jew. He was a guy. Lived back in the day. Clearly, had a following, Yes. He was a social media star of his day. If social media existed, he would have had a huge TikTok following.
Yes, absolutely. And so exactly that. And so you can look at him in whatever way, shape, or form, but there are stories from his life that I think we can all learn from. And so as I'm telling the stories in the book, I'm not doing it in a way that I think is evangelizing or trying to lead people. That's not my job. My job is literally to deliver stories that is going to pump up and fill up the lungs of hope of people that are reading it. And so I found it, this book, to be honest with you, like my publisher was like, I feel like you need to, because it's a Christian publisher, you need to be more straightforward with your faith. You need to talk about, this and that. And I'm like, no, like that's not what I do anymore. That's not like how I approach this thing called faith anymore. And so I'll let Jesus do. If someone wants to research farther and look into scripture and all that stuff because of my books, that is awesome. They can do that. If someone wants to read my book and never talk about Jesus again, that's totally fine as well. And I feel like people feel that from me. Like they know that I'm not pressing this thing on them. I'm not forcing them into a way of thinking. And honestly, like I'm continuing to learn as well. So I say it all the time. Listen, there's a lot of pastors out there that are going to tell you they've got God figured out. The older I get, the less I've got figured out about God. Like the older I get, the more I'm like, man, this is a much larger entity than I ever even thought possible. And so God's getting even bigger for me as opposed to smaller. And I think people actually like that about the way I approach the whole subject.
So this is the book for all 9 billion humans on the planet.
All 9 billion humans. I've seen people, Muslims and Buddhists and atheists and Christians, all of them take the message of this book. And honestly, like most of my speaking events now are in front of secular audiences. So I speak mostly in front of the corporate space. So, I'm doing the How to Human message in a corporate context constantly. And so people are desperate for this message no matter what.
I find your faith journey interesting because the reason why some people turn to faith is for certainty, that the world is so uncertain, but they can go and hear their pastor or their rabbi or their imam and for an hour and a half, they're like, oh, all right, so hold on. I know how the world works. Like they have it figured out. Right. This is what God's intention is. That makes all the chaos around me make sense.
Yes. That's such a good point. And I would say this, if people listen to my podcast or they read my other books, I am certain for me about what I believe. I'm not like this kind of wishy-washy, like, I don't know. Like, no, like when I look at in scripture, I see Jesus and I hear what he says. And so like, I believe in the divinity of Jesus. But just because I believe in the divinity of Jesus does not mean that you, my friend, sitting across from me, have to believe that in order to receive hope from what I'm
Right.
saying. That doesn't mean that you have to believe what I believe in order for you to find hope. And so that's what I'm trying to get to is like, yes, like my belief system and life and worldview is based on the Bible and the Gospels and what I believe about Jesus. But that is not the only way that you can find hope on planet Earth. And so I'm showing people there's a lot of different ways you can find hope. And Jesus is the way that I found it.
So, how to human? I see there's 3 keys here: be human, see
Yes.
fellow humans, and free those around us. Can you give us the
Yes.
Cliff's Notes of each one here?
Absolutely. Be human. So here's the deal. Like if you want to how to human well, you've got to figure yourself out first before you can be hope to other humans out there and see other people. You got to see yourself. So, I mean, I go all in on I'm like therapy, like freaking everybody in some way, shape or form needs to have somebody, whether it's a therapist, a counselor, a rabbi, a pastor, somebody that you can bounce life off, that can see your perspective and who you are in a larger context
There's still a
than you,
stigma
right?
around
Like
that, especially generationally. I definitely see it with my parents' generation. I think Gen
Yes.
Z is very open on this stuff. I mean, we're at the point now where
Yep.
they can tell their bosses, like, "Hey, I need a mental health day, or I need to leave
Right,
work early to go
right.
see my therapist." But there's
Yeah,
still a stigma, whether it's regionally,
there is.
geographically, generationally, about that.
There's a stigma, and I'm trying to break that stigma. Listen, I'm in my late 40s, and so a lot of people in my generation, there is that stigma. They don't want to go to counseling. If I go to counseling, that means something's wrong with me. And so, I'm trying to help people realize that that's not the case. Like you get so many tools in life, and like if you want to be human, you've got to figure out like what are the things, the lies that you believe about yourself, and how can you break those lies and replace those lies with truth. There's a big section on that in the Be Human piece, and so all about lowering the volume of life. And so whether that's social media or screens or whatever it may be, how can you lower the volume of life so the volume of living goes up? Big part on silence and just slowing down in the Be Human piece. Then once you've got the Be Human and you're as healthy as you can be, now it's time to start seeing other people. And this is the hard part. This is the part where you start seeing
This is your
people
buddy from the
that
SWAT team.
This is my buddy from the SWAT team. This is my buddy who, stopped talking to me, unfollowed me on social media, but he was in my wedding because he didn't like I was talking about Black Lives Matter. These are those people. How do we really see them? And in the book, I do talk about, there is a biblical story about an Ethiopian eunuch that was seen. He was traveling into Jerusalem to go worship, and he was seen by one of Jesus's disciples. And I just tell the story. I'm like, hey, listen, again, you don't have to believe that in anything faith-wise, but this is a great story to learn from. This eunuch was a black man from Ethiopia that was riding in the lap of luxury because he was the Queen Candace's eunuch. And he was also a eunuch, which means he was castrated. So you got a black, castrated, rich guy, and then you've got one of Jesus's followers. And in the story, it says that this follower, Philip, saw the eunuch and had to go up to his chariot. And then when he got in the chariot, it said that he had to get in the chariot in order for that relationship to happen. To actually see somebody, you can't see them from far away. You have to get really up close. So I say all the time, get in the chariot. What's the chariot you have to get in? Get in the chariot. Well, Carlos, you don't know the bumper stickers these people have on their chariots. He's got a MAGA bumper sticker on. How am I going to get in his chariot? The goal is simply to get up to the chariot and then to get in the chariot. And so seeing people, you have to see people from up close. You can't see people with binoculars. But the only way to do it is really to get close and get uncomfortable. And that's where a lot of the work kind of takes place. So that's that see people piece. But it's not good enough just to see them. At the end of the day, everybody, politically speaking, whether it be people that you vehemently disagree with, they all think that their point of view is going to give somebody freedom. So I think what we're all trying to do is free people, but we've just got to get to the place where we're like, okay, you're trying to free somebody, I'm trying to free somebody. How can we possibly do that together? Because freedom is really what we're after here. So I use a lot of examples of the Insta Familia in the book, how the Insta Familia gets together and we free people financially. So, we do this all the time. We've raised $2.7 million in Venmo donations over the last year and a half. Nobody asks me when I go to tip the piano player in the airport $70,000 before they Venmo me. Nobody says, "Hey, Carlos, can you tell me who the piano player voted for?" No, nobody asks me that, right?
Can you go
why
through
is
any
that?
op-ed pieces they wrote for their college newspaper?
Exactly. Nobody is asking that question because I feel like as humans, we all have a reflex of rescue inside of us. It's all. I start off my book talking about when I was a little boy getting a haircut. There was a kidnapping that had happened right in front of me, and this black man, this white man, all these different people went chasing after the kidnapper. Nobody got together and had a committee meeting saying, well, let's figure out what we all believe before we go chase the bad guy. No, like there's just this reflex in us. So that's that freedom piece. We can free people together a lot easier than we can alone. And so be human, see humans, free humans is kind of the structure and the outline
So you
of the
just
book.
discussed what you do with your Insta Familiar. For those of you who don't follow Carlos, if you follow him over on Instagram, you get a taste of humanity every day. Sometimes wildlife, rescuing animals, etc.
Sometimes.
But he's able to, in a world, honestly, today we got another headline about how social media is bad for you, especially kids, etc. But
Sure.
Carlos is one of the few people out there trying to use Instagram, social media for good.
Yes.
And so you'll raise money. You raised money for Covenant School Families in Nashville.
Yeah.
Tipping waitstaff at restaurants, airport folks, etc. How do you get into that?
Yeah, somebody did it for me. So literally, I saw somebody do it. Actually, our friend Sharon did it for me in 2020. I'd had the worst week of my life, and she didn't have to do this. And I saw this just tsunami of support come to me and my family. And I thought, you know what? I've got a following. I wonder if I can do this as well. And so I kind of accidentally did it. Like there was a follower I had that was in need of a seizure alert dog. And she was having multiple seizures a day. And she didn't ask me for it, but I just had clicked on her account and I was like, oh my gosh, she's raised $10,000 and she needs $30,000. And this was early 2021. And I was like, well, I wonder if like my Instagram followers would help. Maybe we can give her $5,000 or something. And I remember putting up she needed $20,000. I put up the link on my Instagram stories. And I want to say in 2 minutes, she had $20,000. And like we'd raised the money. And I remember thinking, wait a second, like who are these people? What is happening here? And so then I did it again and it did it again. And now like I'm serving a community that's literally addicted. I'm getting DMs every day. When's the next one? I've saved up $50 in my Venmo. When's the next one we can give to? And again, I think we have found a season where people are so desperate to be unified in something. They're so desperate to do something together without wondering what they disagree with other people that I'm giving them an opportunity to do this, and people are running towards it.
Yeah, it's a discussion that comes up now, given how divided we are, as to like if God forbid a 9/11 type thing happened again. You know, we're old enough to remember what it was like in the country afterwards, how united we were, ready to do anything. You know, if the president asked us to, you know, and some people say it was a lost opportunity to create, you know, a mandatory year of service, or I mean, literally, this country was willing and ready to do anything, and we were united, and there was little to no finger pointing, at least in those few months and days afterwards. We were able to do a commission afterwards where we looked into the issues, built new departments, you know, and crazy. How do we get there again? Is it possible?
You know, you talk about 9/11, and I just remember I wrote an essay on that and how people sprinted in. Like there was nobody that picked up their phones, because there really weren't any back then, to write out their opinion on whose fault they think something is. Like nobody had access.
There was no social media.
So,
that was maybe the key.
That was it. And so what happened? Like our attention wasn't placed on us writing our thesis on whatever it was, and we just sprinted into help. Like we were just like, what can we do as a country together? And so, man, I don't know. I'm not even going to pretend like I have the answer, but I will say that social media has, I think, been a detriment to unity in our country. I just think we have so much access to be divided that I'm trying to do my small part to help us get united after over small things. Give us small things to root for together. And I just think that people are getting to the point. I'll secretly tell your podcast listeners, my next book that's coming out in 2014.
So this will be your fifth book.
This will, yes, yes, will be based on the relationship between technology and our souls. And I did a big experiment in the middle of 2022 that all the research is going into this. And it's unlike anything anyone's ever done. But I found that there are ways, there are going to be ways that we can get back to what you and I remember as that 9/11 uniting moment. I think it can happen again. It's just going to take a little bit of work. And I'm doing a lot of work right now to prepare to deliver that to everybody next year.
Obviously, professionally, you need to be pretty plugged into the technology. You have the Insta community,
Yeah.
etc. What are some things you have done that you have found have impacted you positively in terms of how you consume technology or not?
Yeah, easy. So for one thing, what I do is I carry around. I uninstall Instagram every day, and I reinstall it every day. So that's something that I have to put my password back in. It's kind of a little
Wait,
bit
what's your
annoying.
schedule? So you're
Um,
deleting it at night, deleting it in the morning?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. So I have two-hour sections a day that I can have Instagram on my phone. And so it kind of shifts and moves, but normally it's from 10 to noon and then from 3 to 5. Those are like my day. And then what I do the rest of the time is I have another phone, that just an old iPhone that has no cell service on it. And I record all my videos. So people think that, oh, Carlos is Instagramming all day. But what I'm actually doing is I'm recording everything. Like I'm still filming my day and going down water slides and filming it or whatever. But I'm not uploading it in the moment. So for me, not sharing in the moment has become such a key piece of how I am able to, I think, maintain a healthy rhythm when it comes to social media, particularly. Never upload in the moment. I never upload in the moment. If I take a picture, I don't upload it in the moment. I'm always doing that in those two-hour blocks, those two sections. And the beautiful thing is now those two-hour sections, like, it's not like I'm on Instagram 4 hours a day. It's dropped my use of Instagram to maybe 2 hours a day. Now Instagram pays a lot of my bills, so like it leads to ways for me to make
Right.
money. It's a big source of my job, but yeah, so that's become healthy. Some other things that I've done is, like, I've started. I mean, this may sound so simple, but I bought an alarm clock and I put the alarm clock next to my bed, and I no longer use my phone as my alarm clock. So I leave my phone
Wait,
charging
you
in
mean
the
like an
kitchen.
alarm clock I had growing up, like with the AM, FM
Like,
radio and the
yeah, with
snooze
the radio,
button?
I went to Target and I bought this really crazy thing that us in the 90s had called alarm clocks, and it plugs into my wall, and all it does is wake me up in the morning. And so I don't start rubbing its face and get angry at things that it's telling me. No, it just wakes me up. And so just little things like that I've done to try to be more intentional about these moments that I'm using. And so now when I do have my 2 hours of Instagram time or whatever, I'm very focused. I'm in my DMs. I'm doing all the things I'm doing. But I don't just have it in there. And so my daughter also, I've given her my screen time allotment. So when I want more time on whatever app it is, I have to request time for my teenage daughter. And my teenage daughter is the one that's like, oh, I don't know, Dad, are you sure you want another hour on TikTok? And then so she's the one that either approves it or doesn't approve it. So I've given her some of that access. So I've got a lot of those little kind of life hacks
Did
in
you
my
hit
life.
a wall? I mean, what led to this sort of awakening when it came to
Yes.
tech?
Yep. So when I was first doing my outline of How to Human and writing my book, How to Human, I looked at my screen time, and I was like, holy crap, I'm on my phone 8 hours a day, which is the least human thing. I'm writing a book called How to Human, and I'm on my phone 8 hours a day, which is 49 hours a week. 2 entire cycles of the sun that I'm looking at these 6 inches of LCD. And I kept doing the math. That's 3 months a
100
year
days, yeah.
that I'm looking at my phone. And if I live to be 82 years old, which hopefully I'll live way longer than that, I will spend 9.5 years looking at my phone. That was the moment for me. And it was February of 2021 where I freaked out and I was like, I got to change something. And so that's when I started shifting things.
I think after I finish this recording, I'm going to start to take a look at my. I mean,
Don't do the math.
I don't
Don't
want
do
to do
the
the
math.
math, but I also, it's like, it's a professional necessity, and it's like,
Yes.
but it's figuring out
Yes,
that balance.
absolutely.
And
It's the
and you
balance.
just mentioned your daughter. You're the father of 3.
Yes.
And I speak to you as we just, my wife and I announced to the world this week that she's pregnant
Yay!
with our first.
Oh my gosh.
And we're very excited. And a lot of the discussion, she's 5 months pregnant. We still have 4 months to go here. And obviously, a
Wow.
lifetime, God willing, of what is the tech diet going to be for us around our children?
Yeah.
What is going to be
Yep.
the tech diet for them? Social media exposure, etc. I mean, these are
Yeah.
huge questions that
They
only
are.
our. I mean, this has not been a thing until about 20 years ago, and we're still figuring it out.
Totally. Luckily for you, you've got a lot more data available to you than I had when my kids were little. And the one thing I tell parents is, first of all, for every kid, it's going to be different, because for every kid you have, like, yeah, all my kids know, you may have a completely different rule than your sister had because you're a completely different human than your sister is. You don't have the same capability to self-regulate that
Wait,
she
that's a
does,
really
or
important
whatever.
lesson, because some parents come at it like everything's got to be equal. You get exactly what your
Nope.
sibling gets.
Nope. Nope. What I 100%, I will stand on any parenting stage and say every kid has to be not only must be, has to be parented differently. Like it has to be. You're going to get to date at a different age than your sister is going to get to date. Your brother, like, all
You're
of
getting
that
dessert
has
and
to
you're
do
not
on
getting
the
dessert.
person. Yes, I'm telling you, like it is my kids know that there is no one size fits all when it comes to parenting. But also, I would say this: hold off as long as you can. Hold off giving your kids a phone as long as you can. Like, my 17-year-old son just got a phone last year, right? And all his friends had
But by
phones
the way,
since they
that's
were
like
10.
me, man. Like I
Yeah,
got my first cell phone just to like drive around the late 90s, like junior year of high
yeah.
school. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And so, just hold off as long as you can. Obviously, with the world we're in today, we're so connected. A lot of my son's connections are playing Fortnite with his friends at night, right? Like, they're on there with their headphones, laughing, having a good time. It's different. We live in a different world, than when I grew up. So understand we live in a different world, but also understand that you it's going to be hard, but hold off as long as you can giving them, screens.
And
So.
any other Carlos tips for fatherhood? Is the sixth book going to be a fatherhood book?
I tell people, everyone's like, you and Heather need to write a parenting book. And I'm like, as soon as my kids hit 35 and none of them are in prison, I'll think about writing. That book, but I still have some work to do. Yeah, like I do. I do, and I have spoken a lot to fathers, a lot of men's kind of events, and into that. And I guess I would say, now, did you just find out? Do you know, you may not be telling the sex of your child yet, gender?
Well, we're taping this before we tell people.
Okay.
So yes, but we know,
Okay, got it, got it.
it's
Okay, okay,
as a journalist, if
So,
something's knowable, I need to know it. My
yep,
wife's the same
absolutely,
way. My wife's
absolutely.
a
Yeah,
big
yeah.
planner, so some people are
Okay,
like, "Oh,
okay.
you got to be surprised." It's like, do we? Do we
Yeah.
have to be surprised?
No,
I
no,
don't think we need
totally.
to.
I
Okay,
get it.
yeah.
I get it. And so I do say this, like parenting boys and girls is different. Like it is different. And when it comes to, something that I love to tell parents, especially fathers, especially dads, all the time, is like, make sure the most important thing your kids need to understand is that when you say something, it's going to
Mhm.
happen. So whether that's, like, if we're going to go on a date, I started telling my daughters we're going to go. We went on dates to Waffle House every single Saturday from when they were little, and they knew that was a thing. And so there have been weekends I've been out of town that, as they were 16, they've driven to Waffle House with their iPhone, and we've had a FaceTime date still on Saturdays at Waffle House, right? Because they know that I'm a man of my word. And so I think that's the most important thing that kids are looking for, especially in the last few years, is parents that are going to do what they say they're going to do. It's just the most important thing. They've got to trust you. And so from Jump Street, if you say it, do it. And that goes for the bad things too. Like, if you say you're going to they're not going to have their cell phone for 2 months, then they're not going to have their cell phone for 2 months. You start backing up on that stuff, you're going to create a whole mess of trouble. So just let your yes be yes and your no be no.
As far as your message, and this applies to your kids, this applies to everyone. How to make a difference. The
Mm,
world is overwhelming. I go back to your intro about divided opinions leading us to oppression. Country's going to get worse from here, etc. How do
yeah,
you convey that sense that in this overwhelming world where there's just like, oh, what am I going to do about climate change and racial division and our
yeah.
politics and and is AI going to take my job, and all the various existential questions that are asked in the first 5 minutes of a newscast every night. Um,
Yep.
where do you begin by explaining this is how you can make a difference?
Just to anyone in general, I would literally say, what can you do right now? Like, what is the one thing you can do right now? A great example is when the Covenant shooting happened here in Nashville. It happened 2 minutes from my house. And I felt this overwhelming sense of doom. Like, what freaking another one? Like, what? There's nothing we can do. Politicians aren't moving. Nothing's happening. Well, you know what? I can do something. And I can raise money for therapy for these parents. That's what I can do. I know that. I don't know if that's going to help. Can I tell you, just doing that gave me such a sense of, you know what? The sky isn't falling. We can figure some things out. So what is it that you can do right now? Just one thing. What's the one step you can make? The one decision you can make in order to breathe hope into somebody else's life? Like on the flight the other day, I tried to do stuff. I decided I'm going to compliment every fifth person that comes onto the plane. I'm just going to infuse hope. Like, it's just a little game that I played. Unfortunately, like, an entire men's basketball team came on at the very beginning, so I was like awkwardly complimenting these 6'7" men, But then this older woman comes on towards the end. She had these big pearls.
Wait, were you choosing
around her
something
neck.
different, like nice jacket, nice shoes?
Yeah, nice
cool
jacket.
beard?
I'm just like, I'm just gonna, and yeah, the smile on people's faces, like when they would hear these compliments from me, was awesome. But this woman, I complimented her pearls as she came. I was like, those are some beautiful pearls. She's old black lady. She old, but reaches down to pick me up, and like with tears in her eyes, she's like, my husband gave this to me. He died 2 years ago, and I just thank you for noticing them. And she just gave me this big old hug, and I'm like, you know what? The sky may be falling, AI may be taking our jobs over, the economy may be crumbling, but this woman has breath in her lungs because I made a decision in this moment to breathe some hope into her. And so, yeah, do what you can right in front of you.
Any surprising reaction to the book? I've had a few friends, and obviously this is your fourth go around here, Carlos. You pour your heart and soul into a book. You're sharing stories, and then you put it out in the world. And like Bono, you wait for the critics to react. Even if it's like the greatest achievement you think you've ever achieved, someone there has an opinion. Any surprising, you've been going on tour, etc., reactions to this book?
I honestly, I think probably two surprising things. The first one was the very first like legitimate professional book review that came in from like a nationally publicized journal. It was like 2 out of 5 stars. And I remember that I got that like the week before the book came out. It was the first one. I was like, oh my God, like it was so gutting before anyone else had a chance to read the book that this reviewer would review it like that. And man, I'm just telling you, as an artist, as an author, like that was soul crushing. Like I was like, gutted. But then, because she reviewed it as like a Christian, she said this book is not Jesus filled enough. It's not faith enough. It's not even, he's not really defending the faith. But man, can I tell you, on the other side, after I started hearing from people that don't have my same belief system saying, this book has changed my life. I'm giving this book to all my friends. That was just balm to my soul, that actually the people that I wrote this book for aren't the religious. They're not the religious people. They're the people that aren't. And what's been surprising is how well it's been received from the non-religious landscape, because this is from a Christian author and a Christian publisher. And so many people that aren't Christian are loving the concept of the book. That's been the best surprise out of the whole thing.
All right, so you're talking to a bunch of people on here who consume a lot of news, including yours truly. We're 18 months from an election. We got another one of these happening again, and God knows literally what will come next. How do you consume the news? How do you digest the news around us? We talked a bit about your specific strategy around technology, but how do you approach a reality that we live in now, where you literally, with a touch of a finger, can find out every negative, terrible thing happening in the world within about a minute?
Exactly. Well, Mo News, everybody. I know you listen to podcasts. It's how I get my news, and it's funny. It is funny how like I have, I have all but eliminated television news. Like it's all but gone. And something that I made a decision. This was right when I was doing all the research for the next book about technology and our soul. I made the crazy decision to subscribe to the Tennessean, which is our local newspaper here in Nashville. And I subscribe to the Tennessean. Now it's got its biases, whatever. But what I do every single morning, I don't know who it is, because it happens before I wake up. I don't know if it's still a dude named, Buddy in a Trans Am with a mullet that throws the newspaper out and it lands in my front yard. But I walk out in my front yard and I get the newspaper. And that is how I consume my news now. I mostly consume my news from newspapers. Now, why is that? Because I make the decision, if something horrible happens in the world, I'll be fine waiting till tomorrow to find out, instead of just consuming it nonstop. So I read the paper in the morning. I read the news, the kind of U.S. and
This
then
is
the
your
world
local newspaper
section there. Local newspaper, local Tennessean, and then I got people that I trust on Instagram that I follow, like you. But I consume most of my news from a newspaper in my hands, and it's been the best thing I could have done.
All right, throwback, everybody. Carlos is trying to take us
Yeah,
all back
throwback,
to the
everybody.
90s. I can't wait. Do you have a
There you
pager?
go. Could you just page me 911 if it's an emergency, okay?
I mean, listen, it wasn't so long ago. Like, I had a pager, and then I'd find a payphone, call my mom to pick me up with a
Yes.
quarter.
Let's go.
It's so funny. I was
I
talking to
love
my
it.
parents recently, and it's like, we talk about the 50s, like the good old days, or the 60s, like the good. And by the way, it depends on
Yeah.
your background and the life you were leading,
Right.
etc. And now we look back at the 80s and 90s as the good old days.
Yeah, it's true. It really is the good old days. It is. It's funny. They're playing Bon Jovi on classic rock stations now. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what's the world
Well,
coming to? Like Bon
if
Jovi.
you have Sirius XM, you know that they have like those
Yeah.
stations. And I remember it wasn't so many years
Yeah.
ago. Channel 5 was the 50s station, and Channel 6 was the 60s
Yep.
station. And then
Yep.
those became too old. And now you have the 70s, the 80s. I mean, we're going to soon be too old for the 70s, but now you have the 2000s station and the teens station.
Yes.
And so that just gives you a sense of where we're at.
So good.
Carlos, congrats on the latest book and on the next book. And
Thank
on
you.
finding a really digestible way to manage social media. Look forward to checking in to see if you can maintain that and how that
Absolutely.
works. And hopefully I'll see you in New York, man. Safe travels.
Absolutely. I'll hit you up.